Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving back into some entitled people stories. Today we've got 3 intense tales of boundaries being crossed and the brilliant, often legally savvy responses that followed. One involves a future mother-in-law's cruel prejudice, another a man who takes no for a toilet as a personal challenge, and the last a decade-long property tax standoff with a sister. Here we go. Real blood versus real love. My future mother-in-law crossed a line with my daughter, so she's no longer welcome at our wedding ceremony. I'm 25 years old and I'm getting married to my high school sweetheart this year. We've been together for almost 7 years, long enough that our lives are completely intertwined and most people already treat us like a married couple. I love him deeply, and for the most part I get along with his family. Most of them welcomed me early on, treated me kindly, and never made me feel like an outsider. Unfortunately, his mother has always been the exception. From the moment our relationship became serious, she developed a fixation on grandchildren. Not just grandchildren in general, but a very specific kind. Every visit came with comments about how she couldn't wait for me to give her a grandson, how boys were so much easier, how it would really make her feel complete. At first, I brushed it off as awkward enthusiasm. My fiancé corrected her more than once, gently reminding her that she already had a grandchild in her life. That grandchild is my daughter, Ellie. Ellie is 5 years old and has been with me since she was a baby. She's my goddaughter. Her mother was my best friend, the person who knew me better than anyone else, and when she passed away unexpectedly, there was never a question about what would happen next. Ellie needed a home, stability, and someone who loved her unconditionally. I stepped up without hesitation. She isn't a placeholder, a favor, or a temporary arrangement. She is my child in every way that matters. When my fiancé and I started planning our wedding, we wanted Ellie involved. She loves flowers, dresses, and any excuse to feel important, so making her our flower girl felt like the most natural choice in the world. It was also important to us that she felt included and secure, especially after everything she's already lost in her short life. Most of the family thought it was sweet. His mother did not. At a family gathering shortly after we announced the wedding party, she started making comments that made my skin crawl. She smiled while saying them, which somehow made them worse. Things like, "I just don't understand why an adopted child should take the place of true blood," and "It's strange to treat someone else's child like your own." Ellie was nearby, coloring quietly, not fully understanding the words, but absolutely sensing the hostility behind them. I pulled her aside and asked her calmly to stop. I explained that Ellie was my child, that this meant everything to her, and that her comments were inappropriate and cruel. She waved me off and told me I was being disrespectful to her family by prioritizing someone who, in her words, had nothing to do with them. That was the moment my patience snapped. I told her exactly who Ellie was to me and that I would never tolerate anyone treating her as less than family. I didn't yell, but I didn't soften my words either. She looked offended, almost shocked that I dared speak to her in that way. Within minutes, I gathered Ellie and left the house. When my fiancé came home later, he was confused and upset because his mother had already told her his version of events, claiming I had verbally abused her and made threats. None of that happened. A few days passed and Ellie started asking why she hadn't seen her cousins. She missed them, and it broke my heart to see her confused by the sudden distance. Swallowing every ounce of anger I had, I decided to try again. I thought maybe a calm conversation for the sake of the kids would help. I took Ellie with me and went back to his mother's house. For a brief moment, things seemed normal. Then I heard screaming. I ran upstairs and found Ellie sobbing, her face red and tear-streaked. My fiancé's mother was standing over her, holding Ellie's teddy bear, the one her biological mother made for her before she died. That teddy's irreplaceable. Its comfort, memory, and safety wrapped into one small, worn toy. Seeing it in her hands while Ellie cried was enough to make my vision go white. I demanded to know what she was doing. She snapped back that Ellie needed to learn boundaries, that she was tired of pretending this situation was acceptable. Other family members had gathered by then, drawn by the noise. Instead of backing down, she doubled down. She announced loudly that she was upset I had chosen fake blood over real blood, as if Ellie were an object and not a terrified child shaking in front of her. The cruelty of targeting that specific bear is what makes this unforgivable. It's not just a toy, it's a tangible piece of Ellie's mother, her last connection. Taking it was a deliberate act meant to sever that security and prove who's in control. That's pure malice. My fiancée took the teddy from her hands and ushered Ellie out of the room, trying to calm her down. I stayed. I told his mother that if she couldn't treat my daughter with basic human decency, then she didn't need to attend the wedding ceremony at all. I said she was welcome to show up for the reception or not come at all, but she would not ruin one more moment for my child. She started crying, real dramatic tears. The room went silent, and I could feel the weight of everyone watching me. I didn't take it back. We left shortly after. Since then, members of the family have been telling my fiancé that I owe his mother an apology, that what I said was harsh and hurtful. They stopped messaging me entirely, as if icing me out would somehow teach me a lesson. I find it ridiculous. Protecting my child will never be something I apologize for. Ellie is still our flower girl. The wedding is still happening, and anyone who can't accept that family is built by love, not blood tests, doesn't need a front row seat to our life. The ceremony's for your real family, the people who love and support you. She showed she isn't one of them. Letting her come to the reception, but not the ceremony, is a powerful statement. You can have surface-level civility, but you don't get to witness our most important promises. And our second story. Play stupid games, win stupid police reports. A guy locked me in a public toilet because I wouldn't reopen it. Due to some ongoing medical issues, I can't work a traditional full-time job anymore. Sitting idle all day and night messes with my head, though, so I picked up bespoke security work. It's not glamorous and it's not a lot of hours, but it gives me structure and a bit of extra income, which matters more than people realize. Most nights, the whole thing takes maybe an hour of actual work spread across a couple of hours. Lock a few sites, check a few things, go home. Simple, predictable, and usually quiet. One of my regular jobs is locking the public toilets at a council-owned park. Years ago, they were left open all night. Then people decided smashing sinks, ripping doors off hinges, and setting fire to toilet paper dispensers was acceptable behavior, so the council changed the hours. Now the toilets close at a posted time, and my job is to make sure that actually happens. There are big signs on every door stating the closing times in large, unmissable letters. I didn't make the rules, I just enforced them. There's a regular group of homeless people who camp in the park overnight, mostly in vans and makeshift shelters. I've never had an issue with them. I'm polite, they're polite, and we all coexist just fine. They know when the toilets close, they plan around it. If anything, they're usually the ones telling drunk idiots to knock it off before I even get there. Problems tend to crop up on public holidays or weekends when people stay out later than usual and assume rules don't apply to them. That's what happened on this particular weekend. I just finished locking the toilets and was sitting in my car getting ready to leave when someone knocked hard on my driver's side window. Not a polite tap, a full-on aggressive knock. I rolled the window down a crack and immediately got hit with attitude. "You need to unlock the men's toilets," he said, like he was ordering a drink at a bar. I told him they were closed and gestured at the signs, which were about 5 feet from his face. He ignored them entirely. "I just need to go," he snapped. "It'll take a minute." I explained calmly that unlocking them meant waiting around an unknown amount of time, then locking them again, and that I didn't have the authority to leave them open. He didn't like that answer. "Unlock them and leave," he said. "That's what you're going to do." At that point, it was clear there was no reasoning with him. I started to pull out of the parking space, hoping he'd take the hint and back off. Instead, he grabbed my driver's side wing mirror and yanked it hard, clearly trying to damage my car. That shook me, but it wasn't the first time someone had acted out over these toilets. I drove off, made a mental note of the incident, and tried to put it out of my mind. The next night was uneventful, no sign of him. I locked the toilets, nodded to the usual campers, and went home. I assumed that was the end of it. It wasn't. The following night, I arrived as usual and started my checks. I locked the women's toilets, then the disabled toilets, not feeling threatened in the slightest. I didn't even look around for the guy from the weekend. I figured he'd moved on or cooled off. When I went into the men's toilets to check the stalls before locking up, I heard the door slam shut behind me. Before I could react, the top bolt slid into place. I was locked inside. From outside the door, I heard his voice, loud and smug. He was telling the nearby campers that this was payback for the other night. Then his footsteps moved away, back toward where his car or campsite must have been. For a few seconds, I just stood there, staring at the door, processing what had just happened. Then reality hit me. My phone was in my car. I had no way to call for help. This is the moment the whole situation flips from a nuisance to something genuinely scary. Being locked in a small space with no way out to call for help is a primal fear. It's not about the toilet, it's about the complete loss of control. Thankfully, the same homeless people I'd always treated with basic respect realized something was wrong. One of them tried the door, swore loudly, and then slid the bolt back. When the door opened, the relief was immediate and overwhelming. I thanked them repeatedly, probably more than necessary, and got out of there as fast as I could. Stupidly, instead of just leaving, I tried to talk to him as I drove past, hoping to de-escalate things. That was a mistake. He started chasing my car down the driveway, still shouting, still furious. I didn't stop again, I just drove. That night, I followed company procedure to the letter. Incident report, call to my supervisor, call to the council liaison. Everything documented. I made it very clear that this wasn't just someone being rude anymore. This was deliberate intimidation and unlawful confinement. And I wasn't interested in playing games. The thought of dealing with that kind of nonsense every night was exhausting. I don't get paid enough to be locked in a toilet by an entitled adult throwing a tantrum. I also didn't trust that he wouldn't escalate further or try to damage my car again. A few days later, the council liaison contacted me and said they'd reviewed the CCTV footage and passed it on. He didn't specify where it was passed, but given the circumstances, I didn't need it spelled out. After that, things went quiet. I haven't seen the guy since. I don't know if he moved on to another place to camp, if he was told very firmly to stay away, or if something more official happened. All I know is that it hasn't happened again, and the park has gone back to its usual uneventful routine. The campers are still there, the toilets still get locked, nobody bangs on my window anymore. I genuinely hope the guy gets his life sorted out. Being homeless is rough, and I don't envy anyone in that position. But cornering someone, damaging their property, and locking them in a public toilet because you didn't like being told no isn't how you improve your situation. That kind of entitlement is a fast track to making things worse. For now, though, it's over. And after that level of sheer stupidity, I'm more than happy to let it stay that way. You showed a lot of restraint, and you were smart to document everything. But the real point is how you recognized that this wasn't just a conflict. It was a dangerous precedent. Letting it slide would have told him his behavior was acceptable. Cutting it off cleanly was the only safe move. And our last story. My sister refused to pay her share of property taxes for 10 years. My sister and I inherited a house together after a family death. On paper, it sounds simple enough, but the trust that came with the property ensured it would never be simple in practice. The terms were very clear. Our mother had the right to live in the house rent-free for 10 years. During that time, the house could not be sold. My sister and I, as co-owners, were responsible for the property taxes, insurance, and making sure the place didn't end up in foreclosure. There was no ambiguity. Everyone involved had copies of the trust, and everyone signed off on it. I didn't love the arrangement, but I understood the reasoning. Our mother needed stability, and the house was already paid off. Paying property taxes for 10 years wasn't ideal, but it was manageable if my sister and I split the cost like normal adults. That was the plan, at least in theory. In reality, my sister decided almost immediately that she wasn't going to pay a cent. At first, it was excuses. She claimed she was tight this year or waiting on some things to shake out financially. When the first tax bill came, I covered it and assumed she'd reimburse me later. Then the second bill came, same story. By the third, she stopped pretending altogether. She flat out told me she wasn't paying because she knew I wouldn't let our mother lose the house. She was right about that part. I wasn't going to risk foreclosure just to prove a point, especially when our mother had nothing to do with the situation. The county didn't care who paid which portion. They billed us jointly, and despite my repeated requests, they refused to split the tax bills. From their perspective, 2 names on the deed meant shared responsibility, and how we worked that out internally wasn't their problem. I tried talking to my sister again and laid out the numbers, showed her the bills, and explained that this wasn't optional. She shrugged it off and said, "You're the one who's so worried about it. If you want to pay it, that's your choice." That was the moment I stopped trying to convince her to be reasonable. Instead, I got practical. I spoke to an attorney and asked a very simple question. If I'm paying my sister's legally required share of the property taxes, how do I protect myself? The answer was immediate and almost boring in its simplicity. I could file a lien against the property for the portion I paid on her behalf. Every dollar I covered for her could be documented, recorded, and legally attached to her share of the house. When the property was eventually sold, I'd be paid back before she saw a dime. So that's exactly what I did. This is the smartest, quietest move in the whole story. You stopped the exhausting back and forth and just used the system. You just turned her freeloading into a loan secured by the house itself. Every year when the tax bill came due, I paid it in full to keep everything current. Then I filed a lien for my sister's half, including interest where applicable and all proper documentation. I kept meticulous records, copies of bills, proof of payment, dates, amounts. I didn't gloat, I didn't warn her again, I simply protected myself quietly and legally. Fast forward 10 years. The trust period ended, our mother moved out, and it was finally time to sell the house. By then, I had multiple liens on the property, all properly recorded and completely legitimate. The house sold without issue, and the title company did exactly what title companies are supposed to do. Before distributing proceeds to the owners, they paid off all outstanding liens, including mine. When my sister realized what had happened, she lost her mind. She called me furious, accusing me of stealing from her and going behind her back. I calmly explained that I hadn't stolen anything. I had simply been reimbursed for the taxes I paid on her behalf over a decade. She claimed she never agreed to that. I reminded her that she didn't have to agree. The law didn't require her consent for me to protect myself after covering her obligations. She threatened to fight the title company. They told her she was welcome to hire an attorney and challenge the liens in court. That's when she realized she'd have to pay thousands of dollars just to attempt to undo something that was perfectly legal and extremely well documented. I, on the other hand, didn't need to do anything. My liens spoke for themselves. Still, she tried. She filed a lawsuit against me, insisting I had acted in bad faith and deprived her of her rightful inheritance. The case didn't go far. In court, the judge reviewed the trust, the tax bills, the payment records, and the liens. It took about 2 minutes for the entire narrative to collapse. The judge asked her one question. Did you pay your share of the property taxes at any point during the trust period? She couldn't answer yes, and that was the end of it. The judge ruled entirely in my favor, upheld the liens, and dismissed her claims without hesitation. I was reimbursed exactly what I was owed, no more, no less. My sister walked away with far less money than she expected, plus legal fees she didn't anticipate. I walked away whole, my conscience clear, and my mother housed for the full 10 years as required. I never wanted to play hardball. I just wasn't willing to be the only responsible adult while someone else gambled on my guilt. Turns out paperwork is a lot more powerful than entitlement. All three stories are masterclasses in drawing a firm, non-negotiable line. Story 3 wins for me. While stories 1 and 2 involve protecting a child and personal safety from immediate threats, Story 3's response was a decade-long chess game of brilliant, patient strategy. Instead of fighting emotion with emotion, the OP used cold, hard legal procedure, just turned their sister entitled inaction into a secured debt, allowing the system itself to deliver perfect, impartial justice. It's the ultimate lesson in playing the long game and winning without ever raising your voice. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.